Ryan, let's start by talking about Fernando Mendoza, who has been an established presence at the top of the 2026 NFL draft. Since he won the Heisman, since the final month of the season, it's been a foregone conclusion that he is the first overall pick. I stand on that side, that I think that Mendoza has confirmed he's worthy of it. Maybe he is not your Caleb Williams or just insanely gifted type of a prospect that you drop everything to go get. He has proven a lot to be a player who can set a solid foundation for a team needing a franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I struggle sometimes with Mendoza, Joe, because like in this class right now, I do think that he is the foregone number one overall draft pick as long as everything checks out in the draft process. But it's the old conversation that we have often had on any iteration of the podcast that we've had is the ceiling versus floor debate at the number one overall draft pick. Because I feel like we both agree at this, Joe, that like Fernando Mendoza is going to go to the Raiders, and he is going to substantially raise the floor of the quarterback room because he does a lot of the processing stuff really well. He's an accurate quarterback. He does the little things that matter. But when you're drafting a first overall quarterback, you're not just drafting for the floor. You're also drafting for the potential ceiling of a guy that can turn your team into a championship contender within the next several years of control. So that's where I kind of struggle with Fernando Mendoza. I think he's going to be the first overall selection. I think that in this class that is not very good, I'm fine with him being in that slot, but I still do struggle with the fact that I just don't see superstar. I don't see elevator. I see a really good I see a good player and with things are really good around him, a la a Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins, and that's not an insult to him because both of those players have been good quarterbacks in the NFL, but are you ever going to see a guy that's going to be a true elevator? I'm not sure if I see that with Fernando Mendoza.
I'm not pitching him to be like some sort of a Patrick Mahomes-esque prospect or Josh Allen type of a guy. He's not. He's just not that type of an athlete. But I slightly push back on this belief that he would just be a middle-of-the-pack quarterback in the NFL. I think that he capably could become a top 10 quarterback in the league. I think that the Matt Ryan comparison that keeps getting pushed out there, I think is very fair. Matt Ryan won an MVP. And for the rest of his career, he was firmly probably sitting at that 10 spot where everybody would have loved to have Matt Ryan, but he never was in that top upper pocket except for that MVP season. The thing that I love about Mendoza that I think separates him, he does have the traits of a guy who can be a quality, impactful starter, but I think that he is one of the most decisive prospects that we've seen come out. I think that we need to value more the decision-making that he brings to the table. He is willing to be incredibly aggressive, and he doesn't think twice. I think that a lot of times we get these quarterbacks that come out that are just awfully timid, are awfully afraid to take risks, and it leads to some pretty bad play in their first couple of years. That holds back a lot of guys from taking a jump, and many of which don't make that jump until later on in their careers. We see from Mendoza right now that he has that aggressiveness that is hard to come by, that requires development of confidence through multiple seasons in the NFL. I think that that is where Mendoza could step right in and immediately be a really quality player. It's also kind of like what makes Drake May really good right now is Drake May just goes out there and plays. He's not a guy who I ever feel like is holding back. He's got any restraint. He's just going out there and he's attacking. I feel like Mendoza could do that. And the other last part with this that's really underrated, that's not talked about enough, he is not twitchy, ridiculous athlete that is going to, run away from everybody. But his pocket awareness and his ability to evade pressure, I think, is really, really underrated.
I think he's good at working the pocket from the inside, but I don't think he's great of avoiding pressure coming from the outside. Like, I think that he actually kind of struggles with a little bit of tunnel vision when he's got his eyes downfield from outside pressure. So I will absolutely push back on that aspect of it, Joe. Like, I will. I think that the Indiana offensive line is also a very underrated group that has kind of kept him pretty clean throughout most of the year. But when I watch Mendoza, and I've watched him now on 3 different occasions. Like, I remember watching him at Cal before the season, and I've watched him 2 different times this year, and I've always liked him, but I've never fallen in love with him. Like, I just can't get there with him, man. And again, it's no disrespect to him. I think that he is going to be a good quarterback in the NFL, but I don't think that your aim is to draft a good quarterback with the number 1 overall draft pick. You're trying to draft somebody that potentially be the difference maker of your franchise changer. And when you compare him to other classes, like I know the 2024 class is one that we've talked about a lot because that was a loaded class. It's like Mendoza, if you drop him in the 2024 class, what number quarterback is he in that group? Right? Like with Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Jake May, where would he fit in that class?
I'd comfortably put him ahead of Bo Nix. I think that he'd be behind May. I mean, he'd be 4, and he'd be more of an obvious. Like I wouldn't debate him going in the top 10 of that class.
Can I ask you this question though? Because I agree with you. He would be above Bo Nix for myself as well, and Michael Penix. I didn't like either one of those players as prospects. My question is he closer to the Drake May, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniel tier, or is he closer to the Bo Nix, Michael Penix tier? Because I think that, and J.J. McCarthy tier, like that conversation is the unique one to me, is where is he closer to in that spectrum?
Well, the problem is I think he falls perfectly in the middle. That's what makes this conversation a little bit odd, because those guys that you're mentioning on the back end, Penix and McCarthy are flawed because they were raw and they weren't fully developed, and we haven't seen the development that we were hoping for. The guys at the upper group had very rare tools that made them incredibly enticing prospects. I think Mendoza leans more in the direction of the upper group, but he is very firmly in the middle, because I think he's a better decision maker than Bo Nix. I think that he's got better traits than Bo Nix, but there's not much of a significant margin in terms of those traits, because I think Bo Nix is a better athlete than Mendoza is. The general bit with all of this is I don't think that we have to relate Mendoza back to other classes, though. This is overall a really bad class. Let's just be quite frank about it. This is not a good draft class. It's a really, really bad class. And there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks. So if you're the Raiders and you don't think you like Mendoza, someone else will. Someone else is going to want to have the chance to go and get a quarterback. I think if it's close enough that it's perceived that Mendoza can help get your franchise on the right track, you shouldn't think twice about it. I think that there is a general overthink with setting up your team for success and drafting a quarterback. Just pull the trigger if you feel like he has franchise elevation capability, instead of bringing in some ass free agent that is going to be a stopgap until you just start this process all over again in 3 years, like the Raiders did with Geno Smith.
Right. Well, and I think that we align on the perspective that in this class, I'm okay with Fernando Mendoza being the first overall draft pick for a quarterback needy team. I'm okay with it because this class is not good. Like at the top, it's not great. And then I don't know about you, Joe, but like when I've done second and third round mock drafts this cycle, I am like pulling teeth, brother. I'm like at the end of the second round where I'm like, I think this is a day 3 football player that I just went at number 60 overall. Like it's really, really bad this year. So I'm okay with him being the first overall selection. I'm just saying when you put on that hat of a guy being the first overall selection, you compare it to other years, and most years of a guy that you would conceive will be the top selection, that's where the comparisons, I think, fall slightly short to me. Good player, great player. I'm not so sure about the latter on that one.